Welcome back to Total Freedom Radio, the show that's all about raising the bar of knowledge, healing hurting people, and spiritual warfare. You're tuning in on KRRB Radio, revelationradio.net. This is a show where you can tune in to hear amazing stories of healing, where you'll learn all kinds of interesting things. I like to interview a lot of different type people with interesting stories, but also always want to raise that bar of knowledge. And today's story will do that. Um, don't forget that book 6 in the Prepare for the End series is just about out. I've got it completely edited. All I got to do is try to get it uploaded this weekend to Amazon, and sometimes that's a real fun thing to do. Go to Ask Rina Lynn at yahoo.com if you would like to have any additional information about that, or if you have a short story to tell. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and share this show and support my sponsors. And today we've got a guest that you can also support. We have Craig Mickel from Saving God's Children back with us. And Craig, welcome back to Total Freedom Radio. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me back.
Craig, you sent me an article that just totally intrigued me called Beyond Coincidence. And it was about something that I've looked at several times through the past, but you've made a connection that I never did. So, can you tell us what you were thinking when you started researching this subject again and writing this article? How you made this connection?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're not looking for something; it kind of lands in your lap, and then you got to ask yourself, is this from God? Is this from me? Does God want me to share this? And I think He wants me to share it. That's why I wrote an article about this, posted it on my website, acallingtothepeople.org. And I've been really monitoring this three interstellar atlas since it's come into our solar system in July of this year. And one of the things that someone had said and made a connection is it said it came from the area of Sagittarius, okay, constellation, and that they made a connection to a thing that I'd never heard about, and it's called the 1977 wow signal. And that this interstellar atlas, three interstellar atlas, is coming from the same parts of the heavens, if you will. So I just kind of put that, back in my back of the brain here. And for some reason, about 3 weeks ago, I came across something on YouTube, came across my feed, and it was Michelle, Ron Wyatt's eldest, her daughter. She's the eldest of the three. And she was talking about her dad's journey to Noah's Ark. And she doesn't do interviews. Her sons have done more than she has. So I kind of listened to it, and she said something that just rang with what really stuck out in my mind, that Ron Wyatt was in Turkey in 1977. And a just little thought came to my head, and I thought, I wonder when Ron Wyatt was in Turkey and this 1977 wow signal, which is a radio signal that was received, it's so unusual, has never been replicated since, was received. And I found out that it was within a day of Ron Wyatt finding Noah's Ark. So it kind of began a journey. And I was like, I need to dig into this a little more. And so that's kind of what you're interviewing me about. I wrote this article about Beyond Coincidence.
And what do you think that no one has ever really connected the two events together? And Craig, go ahead and expound on this a little bit because, like always, my dog has decided she wants to go out. So I'll be right back.
Okay, that's fine. Well, what it was is Ron Wyatt was very profound. His family has kept his his over 100 trips to the Middle East in the forefront by having a website dedicated to it. And he's well known for several things: finding Noah's Ark, finding the crossing of the Red Sea, Mount Sinai, even the Ark of the Covenant. And a lot of people have heard of him, and so he's well known in this area here. But what intrigued me about this is when I was looking into this, and that going to his website, it talked about the miraculous events that really happened really on all of Ron's trips in some form or fashion, but this kind of seemed to stick out a little bit more. And what I'd like to do is just kind of take you to what you're looking at in this picture, in the picture right now, is what this Noah's Ark type mound looked like in 1977. But you kind of got to go back and tell the whole story to get the appreciation of the supernatural features in this. So in 1948, a Turkish shepherd in May of 1948, May 19th, as a matter of fact, goes out and he sees this mound of dirt sticking out, and it almost looks like a ship. But what had happened in 1948, and you can look this up because I verified it, is there was seismic activity and heavy rains. It's almost as if God was trying to dust off Noah's Ark for someone to find it in the future. So that was kind of documented, and it just seemed like some sort of unusual structure. Nobody said it was Noah's Ark at the time. But in the 50s, if you remember, the Cold War was on with Russia, and we were worried about nuclear missiles. The military, because the location of this ark, okay, it says if you really read the story, like Ron Wyatt was coming from in his methodology, it didn't say it landed on Mount Ararat. It said it landed in the mountain ranges of Mount Ararat. So, anyways, this is right up on the northeast part of Turkey where Iran comes in and where Russia comes in. So the U.S. military was flying aerial observations to make sure there were no Russian military silos of nuclear weapons going up there. And they saw this unusual, unsymmetric piece of ground, and it didn't fit into the rest of the symmetry. And so, anyways, that led to speculation by different people. And there was an expedition in 1960 that actually went out there and to see what this is. Was this a natural formation? Was this something, from the past? And they did, and they kind of came to some conclusions, but they didn't really come up to anything substantial. So Ron Wyatt followed this, but in his line of thinking, it didn't add up to the biblical location, and that this had a great possibility. And the other thing that intrigued him about this is it was about 510 feet long. Now, if you go to the Genesis account of it, it talks about a cubit, and the cubits that it used, if you do a Hebrew cubit, which is 18.5 inches, the ark would be 450 feet. But if you use a Egyptian cubit, which Moses, remember, he was raised for 40 years. Remember, he was floated down the Nile. He was taught in all the Egyptian schools, right? He was right under the Pharaoh's home. That's about 20.5 inches. And when you do the cubits in the book of Genesis, it comes up to 510 feet. And this object that you're looking at has those dimensions to it. So that really intrigued Ron. He says, I got to get my eyes on it. So this is his first of 100 trips that he took to the Middle East. Okay, this is the very, very first one. He used his own vacation, used his own funds to do that. And so the three things that, this is all starting to come in from a shepherd finding it, seismic activity, a bunch of rain comes in and moves the dirt. People go there, there's aerial photographs. So you're starting to see, like God has a plan for this location. And so what he does is he's going to go over there, and his daughter's being taken care of. Rana is a single parent. He has these three children in their teenage years. And he was just going to go over there by himself. And according to their website and the testimony of the boys, which is there's be a link here in the article, and you can watch this yourself. It said that the boys did not decide to go with him until the last week. So it was like a Tuesday, and he was getting ready to leave on Monday, Tuesday, next day. And the boys go, hey, we want to go to Turkey with you, Dad. And Ron's like, okay, well, here's a problem. You don't have a passport. And they convinced him, say, well, you know what, let's just try it. Maybe it probably won't work, but So guess what? They put in on Tuesday to get a passport, and the first one comes in Friday, which is pretty unheard of, okay, even back then. And then the next one comes in on Monday as they're packing to get ready to go to the airport. So that's a hand of providence of God on there. Now, what Ron had done is he had talked to the expeditions of 1960. And when he was talking to them, they gave him a basic general area that it was. Now you got to remember, this is Eastern Turkey, 1977. It's it's in the mountain ranges. You don't have, interstate highway systems with mile marker 23 next to the rest area by the Sunoco station. Okay. This is just out there in basically untamed areas. So he kind of got a basic general location of an area in hundreds of square miles of where this ark is at. So he doesn't have any firm, you know, coordinates like GPS to go say, hey, this is where the location is. So they end up taking a plane and they get over there and they have to land in Ankara, and they're there on Tuesday, August 12th, is when they arrived, and then they have to board a train and travel east. Okay, and Turkey is a very broad country. It's a very large country, and so it takes them basically. I'm sorry, they came on the 8th. They left on the 8th. They arrived on the 9th, August 9th, Tuesday, and they arrive on Friday, August 12th. And so they have to take a train, and they're kind of thinking about this, and they're looking at all this land, and they're like, well, we really, I mean, this is like a needle in a haystack type thing. He goes, boys, I hope I didn't, make us on a big chasing our tail. So, anyways, they get there and they start taking a taxi, and the town's name is Dongbernst, if I'm pronouncing it right. This is the location. This is the town that the people in 1960 expedition said that's where you can stay and get a hotel. So they leave the train. They're riding on a taxi, and Ron goes to his kids, and they're just looking at this and like, man, where are we going to start on this? And he just says, sons, the Bible says when two or three people pray in agreement that, God answers your prayers, right? And he's in the midst of it. So they start to pray, asking that the Lord would give them a sign. Well, wouldn't you know, about 5 to 10 minutes later, the taxi stalls. The motor just starts to sput, and the taxi stalls. And so the driver gets out. He's lifting up the hood. Ron's kind of thinking and getting discernment, like, is this a sign from God? So they take it and they run with it, and they say, let's go put some rocks here. So they get out and they make a pile of rocks. So they get back in. Taxi goes down the road for another 5-10 minutes. Same thing happens. Then they're looking at, well, maybe the thing's getting ready to break. But they said, let's just follow with it. We're going to walk on our faith. They put another set of rocks in. Taxi starts up, runs down, another 5-10 minutes, stops again. So it does this 3 times. Then it starts and it runs all the way into the town so they can get their hotel room. So you can start to see here, Rena, that there's a couple really, supernatural things that are going on here between the passports, the taxi stalling, the earthquake in 1948, and heavy rains to wash away, that we're starting to see a trajectory that there's something going on here. So, do you have any questions up to this point?
I do. I want to ask you a quick question, then I'm going to have to acknowledge my sponsors for a minute. But what was the purpose of them putting the rocks there? Can you tell my listening audience that?
They felt that this was a sign from God and that this would be a location for them to come back. They were on their way to getting a hotel room. Okay, so
So they're
and they
marking the stops where God stopped the taxi.
they're marking the spots, because like I said, you're basically going on, the, I'm not even sure the road was paved. Okay, I mean these are very primitive type road structures. Okay, it's in a very unpopulated area. So and you have no structures out there. There's no homes. There's nothing there. It's just being out there in the middle of like the Rocky Mountains. So
Even that, it seems kind of miraculous to me. I'm picturing this wilderness from this picture, and they're going through in a vehicle. They're stopping and putting a pile of rocks, but if they go back in another vehicle, I mean, that in itself is quite a bit to find, as far as I'm concerned. You're driving along, and oh, there's the pile of rocks we left. So that shows to me that there's something different going on here. Um, Give me
right.
just a moment to acknowledge my sponsors, and we'll get right back to this. This is fascinating because I've studied the Ron Wyatt finds for quite some time, and I've not made a lot of these associations. Folks, you want to help Total Freedom Radio stay on the air? Please help support our sponsors. We have Simply Clean Foods. Primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze-dried food in our daily cooking. As a community-focused company, they strive to help our veterans through food donations and provide food to victims of natural disasters. They're dedicated to providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Their stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMO policy in testing for heavy metals make them unique in the storable foods market. They say just because our food is freeze dried doesn't make it just for emergencies. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away food that you don't use. Just take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Go to rinalynn.com to the affiliates page and please click in from there, and it'll take you straight to my page and it'll kick back just a little bit to us to help us with our cost. Thank you so much for supporting our sponsors. Help support this show while protecting your family. Go to rena-theinsurancechick.com and fill out a contact sheet. I'll get back to you and get you an insurance quote. I do all kinds of life policies and annuities. I'm a certified college planner and can also hold a certification in debt-free life policies and infinite banking. Contact me today. All right, Craig. Thank you for that little indulgence. We got to keep the bills paid around here, and so those sponsors help. I'm really excited about this. So what's the next thing? I mean, you've linked this to this wow signal. So what makes that so unusual?
Well, let me just give the other thing that was kind of miraculous about it. So when they get there, this is Friday, okay, and this ties into the wow signal because you got to have a timeline with what's going on here, okay. So it's Friday, August 12th, okay, and they go out to their plan was to rent horses, because they're getting this information from the 60s expedition, and they go to the person that's going to rent them horses, and he goes, Muhammad. You got to remember, they didn't have translators, they didn't have Google Translate. They probably had a Turkish to English book trying to you know talk American and explain what they're trying to do. You got to really appreciate what was going on there. And they said, Muhammad. Well, it was Friday, okay, and Friday's a holy day for them, right? So strike one, we're not going to be able to ride horses and cover a lot of ground. So they did meet up with these two people who became guides, and they were really emphatic that they wanted to show them some things. So they used these markers, and they went to the first set of rocks, and they started walking. And the first thing they did is they saw these very unusual rocks, but Ron Wyatt understood these look like anchor stones. What are anchor stones? Okay, they would hang these off ships. Okay, they were the modern version of an anchor, what we would consider in a military ship, where you see these big anchors go in. So these stones, they noticed them. They had a 5-inch borehole, smooth, in this stone that was like 6 to 8 feet. Okay, weighing thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. You don't get a bored hole through a stone, okay, that's smooth like that. So Ron understood that from his previous uh, uh, studies about what has happened around the Mediterranean Sea, that this is something that was common back then. So he's like, wow, I think maybe we're getting close here. So they find the anchor stones the next day, okay, which is Saturday. All right. Then they go out and they actually find stones, as if, back in the days of the Civil War, where I live here in Western Maryland, you'll actually go and you'll see stone hedgerows, okay, little fences of stones, right? And that would be where the farmer would be farming the field. They take the stone out, right, and they make a fence. So then he found this. He found out where Noah's home was. He found out where Noah's wife was buried. He found all these things out. I'm not going to get into all the things that he found. You can do that with the link that I put in the article. You can actually read what I'm telling you here, so you can verify what I'm saying. And then what happened is the boys, they were a little bit sick the next day, so he just goes out. They have not found Noah's Ark yet, okay? And he goes out and he's searching the mountainsides, and he's just walking over ridges, and then all of a sudden, that first picture that you showed, he looks down and he can see that this is the outline of where it is. And it's getting later in the day, but the point is now he knows where this is, so he can come back in a future day, and he's not even sure if that's actually inside the nation of Turkey, because it's right up against where Iran is. So what he does, he comes back in and he's really kind of happy with the whole situation. And he's like, okay, we're going to check out the next day. Now you got to remember, okay, he's in a hostile area. He's an American. He has money. All right. This town is poverty stricken. Okay. It's up here in the mountains. There's no big industry. And he gets ready to check out. And then all of a sudden he gets this discernment from the Lord. These guys are getting ready to rip us off. Right. And so he goes up to his hotel room, he locks the door, and then all of a sudden he starts hearing these footsteps. This is all in this link, okay? This is from his website. He takes a chair, he puts it up underneath the door handle. These guys, are pounding feverishly to break the door down. He and his sons end up tying bed sheets together, slip down like 2 floors down to a roof, break in, and get out in the street in the middle of the night. That sounds like an
Wow.
Indiana Jones. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to say. This is God's hand of providence of miraculous things. They had to leave a lot of their pictures and equipment that they had just to get out alive. All right, they end up getting later on. Some people approach them. They think that they're trying to hurt them. Ron maces them. They're actually Turkish border patrol looking for smugglers, drug smugglers. They realize that Ron and these boys aren't here to do anything. They take them into their custody, protecting them from basically the locals, and they get them out the next day. So what I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to make a sequence of events. Now you can show this um, radio telescope. We can talk about that for a second. Okay. This was designed in the mid 70s. It's called the Big Air Radio Telescope. It's in Delaware. It's in the University of Ohio. And what was it looking for? Extraterrestrial life. You can see it. What it does is it's meant to receive signals. Now, what happened is on Monday, August 15th, at around 10:15 on in the evening Eastern time, it received a signal that has never been received before or since from space. And guess where it came from? Sagittarius, which is the same area that this 3 interstellar atlas came from. Okay.
That's
Now you can,
interesting.
yes, it's very interesting. Now, we're not going to go into that aspect of it, but what happens is this telescope, it just there's a piece of paper and it's marking certain things on a data point set. Okay, remember what computers were in 1977? They weren't really much, and I'm not sure if you have a picture of the actual diagram that maybe I didn't send that to you. But anyways, so somebody
Hmm.
goes in, and they're about 3 or 4 days later, and they're kind of looking at I mean, you don't usually get a lot of action here, and all of a sudden, the person looks at this paper, and he sees all these unusual strong frequencies in a narrow band. And what he does is he circles it, right? Because it's job, just like you would get an EKG, when you used to get papers EKG and you circle things, and he puts wow by it. And that's why it's called the wow signal. And so when they started to look into it, and you can follow this and look into your own research. If you say 1977 wow signal, there's a lot of information out about it. That's how unusual this was. What I'm trying to say and make the case is that after Ron Wyatt had found Noah's Ark on Sunday evening, they had to escape down the outdoor of the hotel, run out into the streets in the middle of the night on Monday, get captivated by these drug patrol people that took them in their security, made sure they could get the taxi back out of danger on their way back to the train. That God gave a signal from the heavens affirming that Ron Wyatt was a good and faithful servant and that he was therefore anointed to find the things of the Lord. That's what my point is to say this is beyond coincidence, and that if you go, and I'm going to read a piece of scripture here to you because I quoted it in the article that many of us are familiar with. And this is from Psalm 19, 1 through 4. And it says, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech, even unusual radio signals. Night after night they reveal knowledge, without speech or language, without a sound to be heard. Their voice has gone out into all the earth, their words to the end of the world." I believe that this was an affirmation saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant," to Ron Wyatt, and it was anointing him to find out the things of God as a 50-year warning to an unbelieving world that the Bible is true. The stories are not stories, they're events, and that we would be uncovering the events of the Bible. And if you've been following over the last decades, all the things that are starting to come back and affirm God's word, I think there's a case to be sit there and said that this is Noah's Ark, and this is an affirmation from the heaven saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
So would you say that the purpose for God allowing the ark to be found would be partly pointing toward where the verse, as in the days of Noah, so shall be the coming of the Son of Man.
Right. So I'm going to
Is
grab
that is
my,
that one
my
of the defining signs that we're right there?
exactly, right? Because if you start and you go to Matthew 24, where this is located at, okay, it talks about the signs at the end of the age, okay? And this is when Jesus is talking, okay? He had been down in the temple earlier in the day. And then what happens is it says, I'm reading from I'm reading from Matthew chapter 24, and I'm reading at verse 3, okay? It says, now he sat on the Mount of Olives. Okay, because we know he was going down and teaching in the temple. Now he's at night back at the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will all these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And then Jesus goes into this long dissertation. He talks about the great tribulation. He talks about the coming of the Son of Man. Let me read what it says here in verse 30 of chapter 24 of Matthew. He says, then the Son of Man will appear in heaven. Well, where's that at? Okay. And then all the tribes of earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven, okay, with power and great glory. And he will send his angels. So the angels are going to be coming too, okay, with a great sound of a trumpet. And they will gather together his elect from the four winds and from one end of the heaven. Now, what a lot of people think, okay, is that clouds, obviously, we see clouds. But what a lot of people don't realize is when you go and you start looking at Hubble, James Webb pictures of space, they have these things called nebulas. And do you know what a nebula is? It's the dust, it's cloud dust in the heavens.
Craig,
Is
let me
actually
remind you, we've got 1 minute left.
okay. So, anyways, what this does is we're just making a case. The article is at www.acallingtothepeople.org. You can read the article. I've linked the information there. Look up the wow signal and make your own determination. If this was beyond coincidence, I think it has. And I think it is the days of Noah. And I think it was a 50-year warning for the world to realize that Jesus Christ is getting ready to come back sooner than we think.
I agree. And folks, I'll put that link in the description and check it out for yourself. And Craig, thank you for coming back to Total Freedom Radio and sharing that and raising the bar of knowledge. And you're welcome back anytime. And this is it for Total Freedom Radio for this week. And we just thank you so much for joining us.